It's The Big Show with me, Alex Belfield, back on your favourite local radio station with all of the biggest stars, and let's face it, they come no bigger than Roy Walker. How are you?
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, it's nice to be on the programme.
And you know why you're good? You're quite funny, aren't you?
Well, I hope so, or else I've just been getting away with it for about 30 years.
Do you think you've had a resurgence? Because it's funny, isn't it, how you do a few radio bits and you do a few shows in Edinburgh and suddenly everybody thinks you're marvellous. You're no better than you were 5 years ago, are you?
Well, I know what you're saying, but it's quite crazy what's happened in the last 4 years. It all started with a fan of the game show I did for 15 years on ITV called Catchphrase. A fan of that being a radio presenter, Chris Moyles, he wanted to devise something to get up the noses of those who sacked me. So he invented this game called Car Park Catchphrase, and it's really, really taken off. And through that, all this resurgence is really, really down to him. You know, I've done 75 universities in the last 2.5 years. And I've just completed a stint 4 weeks up at the Edinburgh Comedy Festival, the biggest festival in the world, and got rave reviews. So I'm as happy as, happy as Larry.
Tell me what it's like to go up to Edinburgh and get that raucous applause from people half or a third of your age.
Well, it was all by accident why I went up. First of all, there was the university gigs. Now, I've got to be honest with you. You can't do comedy to 3,000 students at 1 o'clock in the morning. So what they really only wanted to see me doing Catchphrase and Car Park Catchphrase. So we showed them a little bit of that, and then we got some of them up on the stage, and I found that I could talk to them for some reason or other. Like, here you are in your job, and like in 20 years' time, wouldn't it be lovely for someone to come up and say to you, I remember you used to come into my house and you were most welcome, all those years later. And that's what's happening, really. So it's so flattering. So the next thing was, somebody said to me, well, why would you not fancy going to Edinburgh? And I said, Edinburgh, that's for beginners. You know, for established names on the Edinburgh fringe circuit for the comedy festival. I said, yeah, wouldn't it be different if you went? So I said, well, fix me a venue and we'll give it a try. And I lost a stone in weight worrying about it, trying to sort of re-establish myself as a leading comic and just not as a game show host. So that's the only thing I wanted to do. And all my kids, they kept saying to me, you know, because both my sons are comedians. My youngest son, he's on his way to the Falklands to entertain the troops. And my eldest boy, Mark, is on his way back from Iraq, where he's been entertaining the troops. My daughter, she's an actress. And they all think like I'm a giant of a man. I can do everything, but I can't. I'm as vulnerable as the next dad. And I was thinking, I could fall down. I could get a bloody nose up here in Edinburgh. But I'm going to give it a try. So I did. And the secret of it all was that I showed some photographs of me, because I was going to tell people about, I've been going into your house now for over 25 years, but what do you know about me? And I started to tell them the story of from when I was born until the present day with photographs. People I'd worked with, you know, I opened for Tom Jones for years, opened for Engelbert, opened for Barry Manilow, you know, people like that. So they wanted to hear all these stories. How did I get Catchphrase? Why did I say, right, you know, on the programme all the time? They wanted to know all those little details. And, of course, with a little bit of comedy with them, that was the secret of Edinburgh. That was what they wanted. No one else was doing that. They're all very controversial. But at the same time, I was able to address that. I also addressed for the first time, which was tremendous for me. I'm sure a lot of listeners would have the same problem, where you can actually talk about the loss of someone. You know, I was married for 25 years as a comic. Now, it's hard for anyone to lose a wife or a son or a daughter or a relative. But when you make people laugh for a living, it's even harder. So I addressed that and talked about that in Edinburgh. And my eldest boy said to me, you know, Daddy, Mark said, you know, there's comics up here talking about rape, murder, everything. He said, but none of them as cutting edge as what you were tonight. You know, I thought that was really good.
And did you get any kind of catharsis from doing your comedy after the passing of your wife? Did it give you any consolation that actually people still loved you and loved what you did?
Well, I think that's why comics do it. I think that's why entertainers do it. I think they want to go on the stage, you know, to be loved. There's some people say it's a sad existence type of thing, but I yes, I do appreciate the warmth of the audience and the love of that comes across the footlights. But at the same time, it's the thrill of doing it. It's the thrill of having the gig, going to the gig, doing the gig, making the gig successful, and making someone have a nice night. That's really what all I do it for.
And what's that feeling like when you do a joke or say something that you're expecting, that guffaw at the end, and it doesn't come?
Well, that mostly happens at the beginning. Although in Edinburgh it was a completely different audience because, well, it's difficult to explain how you could... My audience is now very, very young. I was at the Brighton Festival on Saturday, and 7/10 of the audience are all under 30. And they're looking at you, as a Catchphrase host and what have you, on Challenge or whatever, and all of a sudden you're doing one-line comedy to them, and you can see the dawning of the whole idea of you. I'm a very dry, slow comedian, like I'm like Ken Dodd in reverse, and what have you. So he does 7 jokes a minute. I do 1. And you can see it in the realization in their face as to what you're on about. And of course, I don't disapprove of people using bad language. They can do whatever they want. It's a free country. But I don't use it. So it's a trick to hold on to them.
Why do people make it so difficult? Because from my perspective, sat here talking to you, it seems like you have a privileged life. You get lots of free stuff. You get driven around in cars. You get to turn up at places and people are happy to see you. I struggle with understanding why people make this such a difficult thing to understand.
I can give you an example of it. I remember being on the North Pier in Blackpool as a struggling comic, with the famous Black Abbots and the Crankies, and they'd won the Royal Command, Best Performance, all that. And I remember saying to this comedian, no names, no pactoral, I said, wouldn't it be wonderful if someone asked us for our autograph? And he said to me, do you know, I'd really pay if someone would come up and I'd buy them a drink at least if they would ask for my autograph. And a few years later, he was really, really famous, and he was the first one out the theatre, disguised.
Yeah.
I didn't get that at all.
Well, it's pitiful, isn't it? Because it seems as if, while you haven't got it, you want it. And then people, when they get it, immediately don't want it and are rejecting it and are appalled by it. And actually, it's something that really should be a joy. I mean, you give pleasure and you should get pleasure back from it. To resent your audience for that seems ridiculous.
I think you're hit it spot on there. So much pleasure you get back from it. The warmth of audiences, the compliments, even the insults. I don't mind people coming up and saying, I don't like you. You know what I mean? Like, if you go home to Belfast, it's a tough town, Belfast. A compliment in Belfast is like this, hey, you, Roy, sign that, will you? It's not for me. It's for the wife. I think you're rotten. Oh, thanks. What's your wife's name? Margaret, if you can spell. So to Margaret, all my love, Roy Walker, and you look at it in your best handwriting and you go, aye, well, keep it up. And that's a compliment.
Yeah.
And you've got to be prepared for that sort of a compliment as well as an insult.
Yeah, and there's nothing more grounding than real people, are there?
They're the ones. They pay your wages.
Absolutely. And then when you get it all and you lose it, how did you feel when you found out that you weren't going to be doing Catchphrase anymore? You'd had such a long run and a greater career than most other people in TV.
Well, that's a great question that people ask me. And I have to ask you how you would feel when you leave the studio. When you've done something for 15 years on a Saturday, very successful, you've never dropped below 10 million viewers. They don't get 10 million viewers, all the programmes put together now. You think to yourself, well, maybe I shouldn't ask for anything more. That's one question that comes to you. You've had a very good career. Nothing lasts forever. And then another voice says, well, maybe you'll get another job. So that keeps you going. But I was very, very lucky because as well as I became a famous game show host. But while I was doing the game show, which only took 2 weeks out of every year, I was a stand-up comic. I'm doing the best of cruise ships, best of holiday camps, the best tours, and enjoying every minute of it. I went back to my regular job, which is a stand-up comic. So I had nothing to complain about. My wages went on and on and on, and now I'm getting even more recognition for my comedy than the game show.
And of course, what's levelled at the comedians is that, oh, it was racist, oh, it was homophobic, oh, it was this, oh, it was that. And of course, to me, funny is funny. And if you look at what people like Ricky Gervais are doing today, they do exactly the same material, but just do it ironically in the third person, so it's not them. Comedy really hasn't changed, has it?
Not at all, not at all. The way that I do it is to escape the PC brigade. I actually move it back 35 years to the comedians.
Blame them.
So I go, this wasn't me, and this was 35 years ago, ladies and gentlemen.
I wish we could bring that programme back. I go around different radio stations taking this thing I call my show, and I try and get people on all the time like Doddy and like Joe Pasquale, and they'll say, oh, they're old-fashioned. No, they're funny. It doesn't matter how old they are, it doesn't matter what they're doing, they're funny, and they never fail to entertain.
Everyone has a cliche. It's envy, isn't it? For people, oh, they're old-fashioned. No, they're not. They're exactly what you said they are. They're funny, and funny's funny.
Congratulations on being you, Roy. You're such a legend. I grew up watching you on the TV, and there you were, like my father, every Saturday night with me in my front room. And I think a lot of people feel that, probably through the radio show as well, where you do the competition. People feel they know you, and there's no greater compliment in this business after how long you've been doing it, for people to feel like you're one of them and you're a mate.
Well, when you go up to students' rallies and what have you, with 3,000 or 4,000, I was at Loughborough 3 or 4 weeks ago, and there was 3,000 freshmen, and this young lad came up to me. He'd had a good drink, yeah, but he was still polite and what have you, and he put his arm, he says, "Can I hug you, Roy?" And I said, "Certainly, son." He was skin and bone. He was a real wee student, probably living on beans or something, beans and iron brew. So he says to me, "Oh, Roy, catchphrase. Saturday night, round me grands, egg and cress sandwiches. Spot on, Roy."
Fabulous.
Best compliment I've ever had, that.
Thanks for coming on the programme, Roy.
Thank you. Long life to Ken Dodd.